Welcome back to the Dirty Diggler Podcast. Today we have Jay from Sanctum. He is a co-founder. He is head of operations and also of business development. Welcome to the podcast, Jay. So before we jump into protocol specific information, why don't you give me a background? Tell me kind of how you got into Sanctum and what you were doing before.
Sure. So my background is in law. So still in law school when my co-founders approached me about they were working on a stake pool back then, and I joined the team. And since then it was history. I haven't been involved in other projects before Sanctum, so I'm literally fresh out of school.
So are you happy with your decision?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, law's a pretty boring career, to be honest. No offense to lawyers out there.
No offense to lawyers. We need them. FTX needs them. They earn their money. All right. I guess I'll jump into the protocol then. So I got a couple things down. You guys call yourselves the Stability Protocol of Solana. I love this quote. Sanctum is a reserve pool of SOL that insulates Solana from financial shocks. Tell me a little bit more about Sanctum.
So let me share a little bit of the history of Sanctum and unstakeit. Before this, we were a stake pool on Solana called Social. We were the second stake pool on Solana, and we helped work on the SPL stake pool program with labs and foundation, right? And we helped clear the bugs and stuff like that. And then we launched the stake pool, but very quickly, soon after, we realized that that stake pools didn't quite have the same sort of product market fit that they have on Ethereum. It's a very different scene in Solana, but basically we realized quickly that we needed to find a different product because we didn't really just want to fight head on with other stake pools. We didn't see the point in it. So the first thing that we were working on was unstakeit. So a key concept that we came to understand very early on was that it's just kind of a wrapped version of a stake account. So to elaborate here, a stake account is basically what happens when you stake your SOL, right? With a validator, you get a stake account, right? And then you do native staking. But liquid staking is actually just a liquidified version of it in a sense, right? So they're all like semi-fungible. So what we wanted to do was kind of facilitate the active usage of stake accounts. So we came out with this idea called unstakeit, where we just funded a reserve pool of SOL. So what happens is that users can hand over their stake account. So that means if you stake with a validator, right, you get a stake account in your wallet, you can instantly unstake it. So you would give us your stake accounts and we would give you SOL instantly. And then what happens is that we would take the stake accounts and we would unstake it at the end of the epoch. And we will take a small fee. And that received quite a bit of demand in the Slope wallet hack, and as well as, of course, the FTX debacle when there was a serious DPEG in that period. But during that period, if anyone was here during that period, there was this Solana big liquidation event, which was that there was a whale on Solana. He had a big position on MSO, right? He deposited a lot SOL and borrowed a lot of MSO. So he got liquidated basically because there was a serious DPEG and there was not enough SOL in the ecosystem at that point of time to facilitate the liquidation of MSO. And if you think about it, MSO to SOL is such an easy swap, but there was no liquidity for that. So we realized how important unstakeit could actually be, and so we kind of build out the next version of the next phase of it, which was like Sanctum, which is it does the same things, which is it does the swapping of stake accounts for SOL, right, as well. But then we expanded it to liquid staking tokens because we realized that they're kind of the same, right? And then after that, we plan to expand it as the insurance fund to ensure that there's safe liquidations of LSTs to SOL, especially when the ecosystem needs it. There needs to be like the non-touch SOL to ensure that there's this the absorption of reserves basically.
Can you explain mechanically the difference between unstakeit and Sanctum as it exists? Like with unstakeit, you said you guys had Solana,
right,
and you would facilitate people swapping their LSD back into it, and then you would wait for the right optimal time in the epoch to then exchange it.
Right.
What was the actual change to Sanctum?
Actually, the core concept is still the same. We take stake accounts and then we unstake it at the end and we get it back at the end of the epoch. So we replenish the pool. What changed was that we learned different things based on the experiences we had. So like in terms of pricing the fees. So at first we charged a really small fee all the way, right? But and a flat fee, but that didn't really work because in times of serious need, right, the big whales go in straight away and they will take up all the SOL, which means that no one else can touch the pool. So we had to adjust fee to a dynamic fee, right? So that if you take a big percentage of the pool, we're going to charge you higher fees to ensure that not all the SOL is taken. Apart from that, we introduced a sort of a router. So what this router does is that we can deposit the stake accounts into another stake pool and take out the LST and then sell it. So there are now different routes to liquidate LSTs and stake SOL basically to ensure that it's like a very good LST SOL swaps. Yeah. And then we got private depositors. So previously we were funding ourselves with the pool. There were some altruist Solana people that they wanted to fund this because they saw it was important. So we have 200k SOL now in the pool. Yeah.
That's very interesting. So you got a grant from the Solana Foundation when you guys were doing the work on the stake pool. Can you tell me how big the grant was?
I would say it was like something like 40k, maybe.
Okay, so pretty not very significant. And so I'm curious, like you talked about your fees and changing the fees, and I kind of always like to ask teams when they come on, like, did you guys do a raise? I don't think you did. Are you thinking to do a raise? What's your runway like? Can you tell me a little bit more about the finances behind the scenes?
We actually raised under social, like I mentioned previously, we were a stake pool and we raised the C fund back then. We raised about 5.5 million back
Okay.
then.
Oh, nice.
Our runway is pretty good. We've always been lean, not spending that much, and the team is not that big as well. We're safely set for at least the next few years. Yeah, next 2 years.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Leads right into it. Can you tell me how big the team is? I know
Right.
you're a co-founder, and you said that there's a couple other co-founders. Can you briefly discuss anything about them?
Yeah, 3 other co-founders. So one of them is called FP. He's the non-technical co-founder like me, but he can code, and he's from he's basically in charge of like the game theory, economics side of things. He studied in Oxford, while the other two founders are basically devs, right? They're smart contract devs, Jesse and HY, and they're two of the best devs I know. So kind of like understate the radar a little bit, but and you can ask like some people in the ecosystem, they'll tell you that they're amazing devs.
That's awesome. I'm happy to hear that. Can you tell me where you guys are located and if you plan on hiring at any point?
Sure. So we have a home base in Singapore as well as Korea, and then split all over the world. Other than that, yes, actually we are looking at hiring some BD guys in the future. So yeah, we can look out for that.
Nice. Awesome. That's good to hear. Okay, let's jump into a little bit more current questions. I read a report that you recently wrote called The Sacred Timeline, which I love, by the way.
Thank you.
And in and amongst, you discussed the differences between LSTs on Ethereum and Solana. And I want to know if you can go a little bit deeper into that, because we all know LSTs. We're all very familiar with the ones going on in Ethereum and the ones going in Solana. But I don't think a lot of the users probably know the differences between the two. And I think you're an ideal candidate to explain it to us.
Sure. Let me first explain what the secret timeline is. So a lot of research firms have, and basically most people agree on this thesis, which is that LSTs require winner takes all. Basically, it comes from the fact that Lido is the predominant player on Ethereum and has so much of the stake. And why they believe this is so, because they believe that for LST to succeed, right, for a stake pool to succeed, you need to be the dominant unit of the chain. So like for example, STETH is the dominant unit of chain. Basically anyone uses for whatever they are doing. And it makes sense because for something to be the dominant unit, it requires a lot of liquidity, and that is not very capital efficient because you need STETH ETH, right? And you need STETH USDT pools to be very, very deep so that it can facilitate liquidation, because the whole point of a liquid staking token is to be able to swap it back to ETH, right, in time when you want to do it. So liquidity is essential, and basically every single LST will be fighting for that liquidity. I mean, there's a limited amount of resources, so it'll be fragmentation. Why it's different on Solana? It's because Ethereum users can deal with these inefficiencies because they have to. On Ethereum, at least back then, the only way you could stake as a small user was through basically through a stake pool, right? Through Lido. If
Yep.
not, you would have to run a validator yourself, and that requires 32 ETH, and that's 60k USD, right? It's not for small stakers to run their own validator, and there's literally no other way to stake. While on Solana, it's as easy as snapping your fingers. You can just go to Phantom Wallet or Soulflare Wallet and then go to stake and then stake as small as you want. They adjusted the minimum, but it's like if you have one soul, you can stake it to a validator and not think of anything ever again. It's catered to everyone. And on Ethereum, there's the huge, back then there's no withdrawals, right? So once you staked, you didn't know when the beacon chain will go live. Solana, the warm down period is so short. It's like at most like a day or two. So it really made it didn't make that much sense for someone to stake into a stake pool, basically, unless they truly cared about using their soul as collateral. They had some deeper altruistic, like, I want to decentralize the network, basically. So there's this really big difference which meant that users were not willing to take that risk, right? The RR return of staking into LSTs on Solana. And that's why the percentage of LSTs on Solana has never exceeded 4%, right? 4% of active stake.
Makes
So
sense.
yeah, it's really small, and it's something that we struggled a long time to understand it. While on Lido, they take up like 30, almost 35%. I think they recently just exceeded like some really, really high number of all the staked ETH. So yeah, it's extremely different.
What is your best guess as to why the percentage is so low on Solana? What is stopping from users, institutions from restaking their Solana with other protocols? Because I know, like, the way that these new LSTs work is it actually takes the Solana Labs code base, and so the risk of attack is as low as it would be with staking Solana natively.
Your guess is as good as mine, but I would say that it's probably the risk reward ratio. So it's like if I'm a institutional staker, for example, I'm not going to take the risk to stake with a stake pool, right? I'm just going to stake with my validator. I'm making about the same returns. I'm not taking any risk. I mean, it's very clear that the Solana SPL pool contract is one of the heaviest audited, and it's the most battle tested contract on Solana per se. So we know that, but I mean, a risk is a risk. So some people may not just be comfortable doing it, and some people have also said that so it's because there's nothing to do with your LST on Solana, but I kind of disagree, because the fundamental core mission of a liquid staking token is to have liquidity and to use your soul as collateral. So
Yeah.
maybe it's a kind of a mindset on Solana. So on Ethereum, there's a lot of back holders that are willing to hold it for like maybe a decade. While on Sol, I think it's still a little bit short term minded. So it's like in terms of a year or two, and maybe that would change as we mature as a chain.
Could see a future where you start to see LSDs being used as a means of payment. Like, you can go on Tensor and swap an NFT, and instead of paying in native Sol, you're able to pay in an LSD type Sol. Or maybe in a future where it's like with the account abstraction style transactions, being able to pay for gas in a liquid staking token. Not to mention, it's like you said, like, you know, what can you do with it? There's so many good new DeFi protocols coming out, like the Caminos and the Marginfis, being able to actually have capital efficiency and deep liquidity for use with your LSD.
Yeah, that's exactly so. And what we foresee as the vision is basically, as we mentioned, the winner takes all narrative, which is that there will be one or like maybe a few big protocol, liquid staking protocols. But what we see actually is kind of a divergent on Solana, where actually we can have many LSTs, right? They can all be. You can imagine LSTs as just wrappers, commoditized wrappers of stake Sol. That's the unique advantage of our architecture. All stake Sol can be liquid. All Sol can be liquid, and also should be liquid. And so every stake pool will be different in their delegation strategy and the way that they approach they use it. Anyone who stakes a validator should have liquid Sol as well. They should be able to use it, for example, like you said, trade it on Tensor, lend it out to DeFi protocols. They should be all the same.
Quickly back up a second. We talked about the code base. Does Sanctum add any layers of security based on what it does with LSDs? Like, is it more risk or is it using still the same code as Solana Lab?
What Sanctum does is it facilitates swaps. So it's just a pool of SOL that takes stake accounts and swaps it. So in a way, it's doesn't use the Solana Labs contract, but it's not like a dangerous contract. It's just taking the stake accounts and giving SOL. So in fact, actually there isn't much risk to the user at all because you get SOL instantly.
Okay. That's totally fair. All right. You guys mentioned recently that you facilitated almost 30 million of swaps through Jupiter. That's awesome. Can you tell me more about how you continue to plan to grow it?
Yeah, we did 30 million volume so we just crossed 35, I think.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, so we actually don't even do that much volume yet. Right now there is basically a fee. This volume includes the router that I mentioned. So it's when we deposit the stake accounts into a stake pool. So when that happens, there's a fee basically. There's a withdrawal fee and a deposit fee. So what we are planning to do now is try and cut out that fee as well. So we're building a few products at the moment to reduce that fee, and then we can basically pass these savings on to the user, right? And then the user gets a cheaper price, which means we show up more on Jupiter as the best route. And then basically we'll take up at least 5 to 10x the volume once the product is ready.
Look forward to that.
Yeah.
All right. As somebody who follows the space very closely and I keep my eye on LST protocols, I want to know from your perspective, because you guys get exposure to damn near every LST protocol in Solana. I want to know some of your insights on what trends you're noticing. Maybe if you want to talk about some of the protocols that you've seen that maybe aren't quite in the limelight or as popular as they should be.
Vito has been the biggest LST growth in the past year, and they've done a great job. They've done a lot of things, and they have their point system. Soulblaze has been, it will amaze you, but Soulblaze is a one-man team, so his growth is meteoric. It's amazing. It's like, and as well as Marinade. What I've actually kind of noticed is that LST protocols on Solana have come around to the same idea that we have, which is that it's likely there will not be this like Lido on Solana. When what I mean is that there will not be STETH, right? This giant juggernaut, right? What happens is that we all need to work together to grow the pie, because I mean, what's the point of someone eating up the 4%, right? There's like 96% out there for us to grab. So I think a lot of these LSTs kind of recognize that, okay, we have our unique strengths and selling points, but at the end of the day, we're all similar. We're just here to provide, we're not the best way to provide liquidity, we're just the best way to delegate. So that's why there's teams like Marginfi. I don't know if you noticed, they have the LST, they call it as LST.
Great marketing, by the way.
Yeah, right. It's amazing. It's like their verticals, right? It's their vertical instead of their core business. And Marinade's focus has kind of shifted over the past year or so, where they've moved to their native staking, right? And it's kind of indicative of how they think that the business will move.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Marinade employs a different tech than a lot of these new LSTs, right?
Are you referring to the native staking or MSOL?
The MSOL.
Okay, MSOL it's basically the same. They just have a different stake pool program, as in they just altered the stake pool program. So previously what happens is that we can't support MSOL because when they unstake, they have a different method, which is when delay unstake. What happens is that they give you a ticket, right? And then when it's ready for you to take your SOL back, you go back and claim it. But they're changing their smart contract to match every other stake pool, which is they'll give you a stake account, and once it's like warm already, you can take it back, and then we'll be able to support MSOL.
Okay. So you briefly touched on Socian. Can you tell me a little bit about the revamp you guys have in progress?
Right. So as I mentioned, our vision is of many. There are going to be many LSTs, like a ton of them, and we think that there's going to be validator LSTs as well, which is when validators can set up a LST which only delegates to them. It's just a stake pool or that delegates to one, right? And so we're trying to pioneer this push towards it. We plan to launch a stake pool that will delegate exclusively to validator LST. So if you're a validator and you set up a LST, right, and you're able to bring some stake over from the liquid native staking side to liquid staking, we'll delegate to you, right?
Ah, that's the pioneering step you were talking about on Twitter.
Correct.
That makes sense. You're kind of like creating the infrastructure so that the validators out there don't need to go down this rabbit hole of
Yes.
building all of this software. So you're going to be like kind of a SaaS setup for validators in the ecosystem.
Yeah,
That's
and
very cool.
it's to incentivize the validators as well, because like right now they don't have that much incentive, but if we give them stake, they will be more incentivized to push this forward. Even though everyone knows it's quite good, but yeah, no one has that incentive at the moment.
I believe that LST with Marginfi is essentially just that. They created their own staking derivative that only stakes to their validators, and they charge zero fees, and that's why they claim to be, the 8% and the highest
Yeah.
without any token emission.
Yeah, exactly. The Marginfi team believe the same thing as us, which is LSTs are commoditized wrappers of stake. So why not launch a Marginfi liquid staking token?
Totally. You said this to me, and I'm going to say it now, just to give users a little bit more of a clear idea of what you're trying to do. It's sort of like you're trying to create a curve pool for LSTs. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That's basically what we are working on at the moment. We're sprinting and trying to finish, and probably there'll be more announcements soon. It's a curve pool. So basically, our current reserve pool for Sanctum is basically facilitating LST to SOL swaps and vice forth. Yeah. This curve pool will mean that LST to LST swaps will be the most price efficient that they will ever be. So what happens is that basically it's kind of a stable swap you can imagine it as a stable swap for LSTs, where a pool that holds a bunch of LSTs, right? And then when users can deposit their LST into it, any LST can be BSOL, GTOSOL, or your validator LST, right? And then you can earn trading fees, right? The trading fees within it, and then you can take out the LP token, let's call it S at the moment. And hopefully you could also use this S to lend as collateral or do things as well with it. So there's multiple degrees of yield now for you.
The wheels in my head are turning because I'm very familiar with Curve and the Curve wars and the layers that come on top. Does that mean we can get into a situation where, I don't want to call it bribes, I don't want this to be sort of a flywheel scam, but we enter into territory where validators could launch tokens and then try to reward users for coming and staking through them? Like, we kind of go through that whole curve war territory, don't we?
I think you won't, because the curve war is to incentivize liquidity. It might be possible in the future that there would be pools that try and incentivize. For example, if you're GTO or BSO, you may try and incentivize as much GTO so to be in the curve pool as possible. I think for validator LSTs, it's not such a big factor, because you must remember that we're all sharing the liquidity in the first place. And if your validator LST doesn't do that much volume, right, you don't need that much liquidity. Do I see a situation where... So how we plan to do it? Let me explain it. So the way we do it is we adjust it based on how much volume the LST is doing. That's our basic plan for now. So there will be no bribing and stuff like that. All we'll do is we'll adjust it manually based on like how much volume. So for example, if GTOSO pairs are doing the most volume, we'll have more GTOSO in the pool. Yeah, as simple as that.
I see a future. Walk with me on this.
Sure.
Where if I'm a validator, I create an LST, I earn more based on how much Solana I have. You go down the scenario where your neighbor says, well, you know what, I'm going to create a useless governance token because I want to incentivize my users to put their SOL in my pools. And then the next guy goes, well, if you're going to do it, I'm going to do it. And then where this liquidity lives and where, you guys have this sort of backbone for people to deposit SOL and facilitate the high liquidity, you enter into a curve situation where you're gonna have bribes for users to deposit their SOL, because it's gonna, it'll be a race to who's got the most Solana. I see that as happening. Free market.
So you're referring to validators basically trying to incentivize more stake in their LST?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because the more Solana you have in your validator, the more that you earn.
Yeah, of course. So firstly, I think this is referring to the stake pool, right? The stake pool delegation strategy.
Yeah.
I welcome it, right? Like I don't think it's a problem now, right? If that happens,
No.
it's a helpful problem. Also, I think that our stake pool alter its delegation strategy in the future, right? So obviously it won't be like if there's like 1,000 validators that have ton of SOL, we're not going to delegate like to the to the walls and stuff like that. Once the scene is mature enough, I assume also that there will be other stake pools that do similar kinds of things, right? But I kind of think that this is like a happy problem to have in the future. That means that a bunch of the stakes sold now that is locked, I won't say locked, illiquid, has been unlocked to the ecosystem. That also means that the TVL of Solana will skyrocket. And that's a problem for the future. I see it.
And when I say these curve things that are similar, curve similarities, I mean it in an endearing, good way. I think it's healthy for our ecosystem to have this.
Right.
And so I look forward to seeing your guys' implementation, and I look forward to seeing what LSTs and validators are going to do.
Yeah.
Anyways, we'll move on from that. Can you tell me anything about future partnerships or integrations? Like, I know you guys have done a good job with Jupiter, and I think a lot of the users probably don't even know that you guys facilitate what you facilitate.
Yeah.
Are we going to be seeing you integrating more? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
In terms of partnerships, I think it'll be mainly with the curve pool, right? With the LP token, we want to ensure that like the LP token will be able to be used in certain protocol, but it's some time away. For the term integration as well, I don't think there's much on that front, because I mean, once we're integrated with Jupiter, what that means is that anyone can integrate Jupiter, and they've integrated us, so we don't really need to do like direct integration.
So it'd be like if you guys, if you wanted to get into a borrow lend, right? Because you want to help facilitate liquidity for all of these LSTs, and you know, Camino and then with Marginfi, like they already have LSTs listed.
Yeah.
If they're integrated with Jupiter, they take use of your services.
Correct. Yeah. If their liquidations are powered by us, basically. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Oh, I was going to say that we did have an integration with Flare, where they integrated our instant unstake for their validator staking. So it seems to have quite a bit of uptake. So hopefully we'll get on some other wallets as well. Yeah, in the future.
That's awesome. Do you have any thoughts around building a moat?
Yes. Well, our killer feature that no one can replicate.
Yeah, you're open sourced. You know, what stops people from coming in and trying to do what you've done?
I think this is a very intimate understanding of these concepts that no other person could have, right, without having worked on stake pools and unstake it and having this unique insight. And still up to this day, when we explain it to people, some people still have trouble understanding it. So it will take a while, right? So we have the advantage of time. We have the advantage of the private deposit as well. So like we have one of the biggest reserve pools on Sol, which we can do a lot of with, Other than that, do we have any serious moats? I would see it more as...
a big first mover's advantage.
Yeah, a big first mover's advantage. I would see this as more of... Sanctum is more of a collaborative thing, right? We're going to work with stake pools, going to work with validators. Everybody should have a piece in making it big. So
nice.
Not too worried about competition.
No, that's good. And like if you're thinking about it as well, like using, say, like the Curve as an example. Curve was first, and it provided liquidity for so much stable coins.
Correct.
It created itself, and no matter how many people have tried to come along and maybe recreate or compete, Curve is still Curve, and it still does wonders for the Ethereum ecosystem.
It's a bit like Jupe on Solana as well. They were first. I mean, there were other ones that came after, but Jupe remains the king.
Yeah.
So.
And I kind of like, it's sort of the same analogy as like Jupe is an aggregator, and so it's not stealing volume from dexes. It's literally just aggregating best prices for users. And you guys are essentially going to be like an aggregator for LSTs. And so you bring that volume to the users, and so they get the best swaps on whatever they choose to use. You're not telling them what they have to use.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. How about this? Is there a future where Sanctum has a token?
More to come soon. Yes, more to come soon.
Cool. All right, it's a tough one. Based on what you're seeing with current LSTs, and this can even be in Ethereum, what are the worst features? Where do you think people are trying to innovate when it's unnecessary? Because I'm willing to bet we're going to see a plethora of LST tokens pop up based on the ease. And is there something you're seeing that you think shouldn't be done?
I would say that the worst feature is that LSTs rely, right now, at least not on Sol, right? On Ethereum, they rely heavily on you incentivizing your own liquidity pools, right? Which is the X Sol to Sol or to the X ETH to ETH pools, right? You have to incentivize it. This really is very, very capital inefficient, right? Because you are now redepositing your stake token into the pool. You're losing your yield, right? It's super capital efficient. What I would like to see is more concentration. I would like to see Ethereum explore this idea as well of like more concentrated liquidity for all of the stake DeFi. I'm not sure how they would do it, but that could be cool. One interesting thing I could see LSTs happening is that maybe we could not look at LSTs as like, oh, they're validator so or they're like a stake pool so. One interesting idea I could see is that we could see LSTs as people so, right? For example, we could have a dirt so, right? What I mean is that you could set up your own like stake pool that delegated to any validator that you chose, right? For example, and then you would have your dirt so, right? And what could happen would you could take all the staking returns, for example, right? And then provide a private chat, for example, for your user. And then basically you would be earning the yield and your users would be basically not really paying. It becomes like a free on-chain patron where your users don't really lose any money. Yeah, but they lose staking returns.
Nice. It's like socialized staking, so
Correct.
to speak.
Exactly. Yeah, socialized
It would be
staking.
like, wow, that's interesting. It would be like instead of like a token gated community or a subscription based service, it's like, look, if you deposit 10 Sol,
correct,
you get access to this stuff and you help me pay for X and Y and I give value back. That's very, very interesting.
Yeah, I was wondering, would that be interesting, right? You, for example.
So interesting. Listen, don't tell anybody. I'm gonna delay posting this podcast for as long as possible, and let's get a dirty soul going.
It's not bad.
Oh my god,
it's not bad. It's 8% a year.
It's not bad.
Dude,
it's not bad. It's not bad. Wow. And then like you could really, it's up to the user. It could be one soul, right? It's like you decide.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that's very.
Yeah, you could explore this idea after the pod.
Cool. Wow, that is so cool. Anyways, all right. I think we've discussed a lot. Very happy with it. I've worked this over in my mind a ton of times, and I've been too ashamed to ask.
Yeah.
What is the difference between an LSD and an LST?
Oh,
and is there one?
There's no difference. The LSD.
There's no difference.
Was the original term, which a derivative, right? Liquid staking derivative. The staking ecosystem rejected it because they were getting into some trouble with on the regulatory side. So they were like, oh, it's derivatives. We don't like this term, so they swapped it. So now we've moved over to LSTs. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I thought so, and I wrote a paper a long time ago about LSTs as they was just popping off in Ethereum. And then I always saw LST come in, and I was so committed to the LSD. I thought the acid mimetic was really funny, but I guess derivative, trading. Okay, all right, fine. Now I know. Maybe I'll cut that from the pod so I don't look like an idiot. All right, Jay, give me your final thoughts. If there's anything that we missed, didn't cover, tell the people where they can find you, where they can find Sanctum.
Sure. Basically, Sanctum will see and we'll make sure that also is liquid on Solana. So whether you are a user, your staker with a validator, or your staker with a stake pool, also should be liquid. And let's work together to get this done. You can find me on Twitter. You can find Sanctum on Twitter as well. It's Sanctum Soul. And you can find me on Twitter, Eggpanned, EGGPANNED.
Nice. Cool. And before you go, the one thing I always like to ask my guests, what's the one thing that has kept you sane through the bear market, in this new bull market, wink, wink, whether it's touching grass, whatever?
It's got to be exercise, so it's swimming and going to the gym.
Love it. We're all so healthy now. It's what's going to keep us going.
Yeah, no sleep for the next week. We're in it, right? Yeah. We're in the bull market already.
Yeah, so true. Down, up, doesn't matter. Things are getting frothy. Well, sir, thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.